We are back. It is episode 152 of the Metal Roundtable. I am Metal Rob, and with me, as always, is the great
Carcass John.
Yes.
Back to the old school way of doing things.
Man, it is old school, and like in the James Bond movie I watched last night, I would like to quote, sometimes the old ways are best. So, yeah, there you go. And
well, as the Sex Pistols would say, it feels pretty vacant, and we don't care.
That's right. It
does feel weird without Scott, but we'll plot away.
We will. We do have a guest today. Scott is on vacation, taking some much needed time off. Chris, our guest today, Chris Manning, is waiting in the green room. So we will get to him in just a couple of minutes. But let's roll through some shout outs real quick. I want to shout out, first of all, Baron Von Headbanger. You guys need to go read through the comments, the show comments, because he has lit it up with some pretty funny stories already. So thank you, Baron Von Headbanger, for being here. And I also want to shout out Spicoli, because Greg always shares our stuff and supports us. Appreciate it very much. If you're in the DFW area and you ever see Headbanger on a bill, go see Headbanger. They do exclusively 1980 to 1985 heavy metal, Nawabum, traditional American metal, stuff like that. And Spicoli is quite good at it, but he is a longtime supporter of the Metal Roundtable, and you can check him out Sunday nights on KNON 89.3 here in Dallas, doing Reckless Rock Radio, and you can stream it anywhere in the world. Just go to knon.org, and Spicoli's got a badass show featuring North Texas, rock and metal, and he's way cooler than we are. Am I right?
Well, and he's good. Headbanger's good for Spicoli because he's got the governor Rick Perry of War Beast, Gamacide, Warlock, blah blah blah, and I now of Ironjaw, and then the mighty John Perez that just absolutely is a wild man up there. So plus they're back at their bass and drums got it going on. It's a great set, and yeah, man, Spicoli knocks it out of the park. I didn't realize that guy could sing like that, but he sure can.
Yeah, he's good. I've seen some video. I've never seen him live. We've hosted a show. I think did you and I host the metal thing, or was that me and Spicoli? That was us? Okay.
That was us.
I can't remember shit. Well, let me give you the social media stuff. You can follow me on Instagram at I am Metal Rob. You can follow the Carcass at Carcass John Art. I am very easy to find on Facebook. You can find the Metal Roundtable. You can find the I Am Metal Rob page. So we're out there. And, well, I won't advertise any of your new social media platforms. I don't know if you want me to or not.
You can if you want. I mean, I'll be honest with you. The return to Facebook is sort of an experimental thing. I know that they have a little more wide reach, and I'm able to post things a little differently by myself, like links and so forth. So if you want to look me up at John Fossum, Fossum, looks like possum, sounds like awesome. Go ahead, man. Hit me up and message me and do whatever. But anyway, I got some shout outs too if you're done.
Yeah, man, hit it.
First of all, I want to shout out to Lyric Freyshon, who's our friend from War Beast and Malconstruct, and he is having some health issues right now and doing some time in the hospital. We hope the best for him. That's Gina Corbett's son. And so shout out to the families of all those involved in that circle, that group that I've become part of. It feels like he's more, not just a friend, he feels like more of a family member to me. So shout out to him. Shout out to Harmless Rebel, Steve Bodine. I finally got the U2 Joshua Tree after years and years of looking and rejecting VG++ copies from Discogs and eBay and so forth. So appreciate that, man. Plus he sent me an extra he sent me an extra CD, The Rivers of Nihil. I'll have to check it out later. And then Scott Raging Waters sent me a disc, and it's killer. So I appreciate all the love out there. People sending me stuff. I'll send you stuff back. You know what? That's the way we do it here. Nobody leaves Casa de Carcass empty-handed.
That's right.
Not even Metal Rob, and he's got
Nope.
plenty of stuff too. But we always seem to scratch each other's metal back with fun stuff. So, but anyway, that's all I got, man. And yeah, if you want to hit me up on Facebook, if that's easier for you, hit me up.
Yeah.
JOHNFOSSUM. But you can always reach me on Instagram on Carcass John Art.
So I posted the link to merch. If you want to check out some Metal Roundtable merch, you can do that. I've just threw the link out there in the comments. I also threw a link out to one of Chris's bands, and we're going to bring him on right now. But if you'll scroll up to the top of the comments, you'll see his band, the Zeppelin Project. So check that out. But let's, without further ado, for Deep Purple talk today, let's bring on the great Chris Manning.
Yeah.
What's up,
Hey
dude?
guys, what's
How are
going
you,
on?
man?
Sweet. I feel better in a power trio. It kind of feels a little better.
Y'all are gonna have to be the rhythm section.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
can play a little. I can keep 4/4. You can rip it on guitar and make us all look good. And Rob, you're gonna have to go plunk, plunk, plunk on the bass
Yeah,
and sing something.
I learned a couple of one-finger chords this week.
Okay, there you go.
So this is going to be the most vague tease of all time before we get into Deep Purple talk. Chris and I are embarking on something that I did a 3-song EP of a decade ago that was written years before that. Well, we're embarking on a new album, and so that's going to be fun. But Chris is going to help guide me through some of the modern technical recording things and help me learn to plunk out some demos. And so, yeah, Carcass, you know a little bit about that, but that is what we call a tease, and it is extremely vague. As I know more and more develops, we will let you know, but I can't wait to reveal more soon. Glenn Rogers is joining us in the comments. Thank you very much. Always
Hey, and Purple does rule, by the way, just to get it out there.
Yeah, they do.
I'll start posting up some of the comments here. British bands. All right. Well, we're going to get into Deep Purple. Now, we did a Deep Purple episode way back some years ago. Carcass's shirt says Blood Incantation, by the way. Damien Hair Metal.
Easy. Piece of cake. I'm being nice to you today. I mean, I've worn this logo before.
Scott Evaporated Waters. Lamb Man Rob, yes. Andrew could not do the show till 7, and unfortunately, we already had plans for the 5 o'clock show today, so we couldn't get that worked out. But we will get Andrew on, and Carcass mentioned Rivers of Nile and Solid Tech. Yes, indeed.
Right.
Yes, Glenn Rogers. Hello, guys. Purple rules. Let's get into it. So I'm going to tell you you guys know way more about this than me and Chris. Carcass and Chris are going to have opposing views on something. I found that out. So I am very excited to open this can of worms, but
that wasn't a very vague tease that time.
No.
The first one was vague. Now you've just basically said that
right.
Chris and I are going toe to toe.
But if we all agreed all the time, it wouldn't be fun. So this is going to be great. And I've already told you that Chris was going to lay waste to your opinion. So
okay.
we'll see if that happens. But my foray into Deep Purple, honestly, like a million other things, started with just radio songs. I knew Smoke on the Water. I knew Hush. I knew, whatever they had that made, rock radio. And that was about it for me. I didn't get into Deep Purple until I started record collecting, 15 years ago. Just like going backwards on some of the other bands too. Like I didn't know much of the early ZZ Top stuff except for the radio songs. And they were one of those bands that I went and picked up everything because I saw how great they were. And so I went very much backwards for them. But Chris and I were into the 90s stuff and the 2000s stuff big time. So we'll get to that later. But let's go around the horn and talk about everybody's intro to Deep Purple. And then I'm just going to start holding up CDs and we'll just talk about whatever. Carcass, what got you into them?
Well, as a 13-year-old with a full-time job working for Oscar Mayer.
I think that's illegal.
No, it's not illegal. Not when your parent signs off on it. So anyway,
I
had money.
So your first job was handling wieners. Is that what you're telling me?
That's a lot of baloney, Rob, and you know it. So before I fry your bacon on this one, just let me finish my story. I had a responsible job stocking shelves for Oscar Mayer. I had money and I had time. And usually those two things for a young man are not good. But I used to walk after my shift. I used to walk down to the BX, the Base Exchange, where they sold a little bit of everything and no tax, of course. So that was a savings. So my first two albums that I ever bought were Grand Funk Shining On and Black Sabbath's first album. The second two albums I bought were Deep Purple Machine Head.
Greatness.
And Black Sabbath Paranoid. So already we're seeing a trend here. Black Sabbath. And as I told Rob before the show, the first four, in fact, now that I think about it, the first four of the first 15 albums that I ever purchased in my life were Deep Purple albums, because I ended up going back and buying this great record made in Japan.
Yep.
And which caused me to go back and find this, Who Do We Think We Are? And
my favorite Deep Purple songs.
And In Rock. I love this album, by the way. So, but all that being said, their catalog was so prolific. It's like they were putting out a record every 9 or 10 months, it seemed like. And so I was able to catch up on them really quick. And by the time I was driving a car, I mean, I had Deep Purple in heavy rotation. So anyway, no, Hardesty to no. Anyway, so all that being said is they were like a staple in forming my music opinion moving forward. But Black Sabbath was right neck and neck with Grand Funk Railroad kind of as a distant third. But Deep Purple and Black Sabbath was the formation of my foundation, basically. How about you, Chris?
Well, first of all, I don't know why Rob wanted to be so adversarial that you and I were going to butt heads on something. I am very opinionated about everything, and I'm not casually interested in anything. So I am really into Deep Purple. And I threw down some opinions the other day on the phone to Rob, and that may be what he thinks we're headed for a showdown on this thing. But
oh no, Carcass started this before the show. No, it's not even
all right.
Well,
you know, I have an older brother. He's 5 years older than me, and my taste in music was handed down from my brother. He's a drummer, and his band always rehearsed at our house, and they had some Deep Purple stuff in their, what they were rehearsing. And, very early on, I think I know I got In Rock and Machine Head for sure. Then the Mark III lineup, Burn, Stormbringer. But being a guitar player since I was a kid, I just immediately gravitated to Blackmore and later Tommy Bolin, who was only on one album. And that will be very polarizing to talk about. But Blackmore drives the ship for me. He is continues to be one of the most underrated guitar players of all time. Grossly underrated. The guy invented the neoclassical style of guitar playing. There would be no Yngwie without Blackmore. There just wouldn't be. Congratulations, Yngwie, on playing fast. I'm extremely impressed with how fast and technically sound you can play. But the guy made the same album 20 times in a row. Blackmore has always gone places and done a lot of different things, counting Rainbow, but everything starts and ends with Ritchie Blackmore when we're talking about Deep Purple. So that's my intro.
So, Carcass, what was the quote that you had right before the show?
Okay. So he said something very key here. So I don't know that we're going to be that far. He's not going to bludgeon me too badly when I say this, because moving forward, and I, in principle, agree with you, Chris. I agree with you. Blackmore was a wizard. He was completely he was very as you say, neoclassical. My mother is a world-class keyboard player and has an affinity for classical music, so I listened to a lot of classical music. I heard of that influence in his playing. But when he left and Tommy Bolin took over, I realized that Blackmore was great, but Bolin had added something to the mix. And people were, I used to get Circus Magazine, Hit Parader,
Me too.
and it was always about Jimmy Page, and I thought, man, Blackmore is being left in the dust, and he's technically way better. But then I heard guys, I grew up on Hendrix too, and I kept thinking, I guess it's Hendrix and then everybody else, but it certainly wasn't Jimmy Page. I thought Blackmore was better than Jimmy Page, but honestly, I thought Bolin added a different element to the band. And then moving even further forward, I think Steve Morse blows them both away in a different kind of way. And I'm not saying that Blackmore's a bad player. I did not say that.
I know.
Yeah.
I just said that I think that I don't think he's the greatest guitar player ever, but he does make up for any, and I don't even know that I can call them any lacking or any whatever. He really doesn't have any holes in his game, but I just think Morris is maybe more technically sound, and maybe it's technology, maybe it's the fact that he had someone to learn from, and Blackmore created something completely new. So that was the controversy. I said, yeah, Blackmore, But
So
then when Bolin showed up, I thought, oh, Deep Purple will never be the same. And then I listened to Come Taste the Band, and I'm like, well, wait a minute. They didn't really lose a step. In fact, I saw them live on this tour, and I thought, man, they're actually tighter. They're almost, I don't know. I didn't know how to describe it, because I actually saw them with Tommy Bolin playing, and I just thought,
what city did you see him at?
Would have been Lincoln or Omaha, Nebraska, maybe Iowa City.
Okay.
Somewhere in the Midwest. And but so it shocked me a little bit, because I just didn't think Blackmore could be replaced. It was like it would have been easier to replace Jimmy Page, in my opinion, than to replace Ritchie Blackmore. So when Tommy Bolin shows up, I'm like, who is this hack? And it turns out he's not a hack. He's really good. So to your point, because I know you were going to mention, something about Tommy Bolin. So anyway,
let me call the ball just for a quick second. So I failed to do this at the start of the show when we brought Chris on, and I should have done this. So Chris is a longtime guitar player, which he said. Now, with Carcass bringing up the stuff about Jimmy Page, so you're playing in a Zeppelin tribute, which is phenomenal, by the way. I've seen the band. They're amazing. But so what do you think, kind of playing the role, if you will, of Page in the band? What do you think about Page versus Blackmore, or is it just apples and oranges?
Well, I'm glad you asked, because that's a good point. Blackmore did not appear to be constantly impaired when he played live, and Jimmy Page had a reputation for that. So you can certainly find live recordings of Zeppelin and Page sounds bad. You can also find live recordings where Page is a total badass. They're totally different styles. Page has this beauty of playing, I call it keeping it between the ditches. He almost goes completely off the road, but he stays within the ditches, and there's a beauty in that, how he speeds up and slows down within the time signatures. And he's a brilliant blues player. He's very, very unconventional. Like, look at his Black Dog solo. But when I went in 10 years ago to play, okay, I'm going to be playing Jimmy Page, I went in a little overconfident because there was some solos that I learned that kicked my ass. And I'd been working on Satriani stuff and Eric Johnson. So he can play very, very fast and very clean. Um, and he's brilliant, but he can, like Tommy Bolin, when he's impaired, he can be really bad. And I think, and it's also a matter of what you like, who you like, what resonates with you. There's guitar players that resonate with me big time, and there's others like Kirk Hammett that I yawn and just go, I don't get how you could study under Satriani and be such a boring vanilla guitar player. But that's just my opinion.
That's my opinion too. But to your point, I don't dislike Page, and probably the way you described it is the reason why I do like him, because I am steeped in the blues and I do love the blues, and he has a way of rock and roll-ifying the blues. He makes the blues sound a little more rock and roll, I guess. And I mean, I saw them live in '77, and it was mind blowing. I mean, it was mind blowing, and so I can't. I'm not disparaging the guy at all. But what I was saying is that all the hype was on Page, and Blackmore got little or no respect. And whether you agree or disagree with that, that's just my perception. And once again, here we are scatter shooting about
Well,
about,
Yeah.
about the same thing.
And if I, to answer Rob's question, my favorite of the two is Blackmore. I cannot tell you what a huge Blackmore fan I have been my entire life. Same for Tommy Bolin. And I loved Zeppelin, but it kind of came later in life for me on really appreciating Page. Whereas I've been in awe of Blackmore and Tommy Bolin my whole life, ever since I was a teenager. Even before that, when I first discovered Deep Purple. And I don't get it how you have other bands that are considered classic rock. You can go onto a classic rock station and hear Crazy Train, you can hear White Room, you can hear all these other bands, and Deep Purple will be MIA. They might play Smoke on the Water, you might hear Highway Star. My God, they have a deep catalog of amazing songs. They kind of invented a genre, a five-piece band with keyboards that they ran through a Marshall to distort it. I mean, and you mentioned the In Rock album. That's their turning point. That's where this is the Deep Purple sound. We found it. It took 4 or 5 albums. We found it.
And let's get into that. So, and we'll get there very quickly. So what I want to do, I've got my stack of CDs here. I don't think I have everything, but I think I'm pretty close, because there's so much live stuff that I don't have. So let's just go very quickly, and then let's get into the In Rock thing, because I think you'll have a lot to say about that. So this to me, and this, hang on, and this.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't even waste much time on it. I mean, I wouldn't even in this discussion.
I'm glad to have them in the collection, but you'll notice my book of Taliesin is sealed.
Yeah,
Hush is pretty cool. It was totally a pop, rock song.
Mark I lineup sounds dated. I don't have a lot of reverence for the Mark I lineup.
And then they cover a Hendrix song on the first album or the second album.
I think they were desperately trying to make their mark and sell records.
So I largely dismissed that stuff. I've listened to them. It didn't resonate with me at all. It just sounded like a ton of that 60s psychedelic rock and pop that was out there. But then
Yep. Greatness.
Hit the
Greatness.
gas pedal, boys. All right. So, if you know, and I suspect you probably do, why the change? Was it intentional? Was it accidental? What do you know about the transition from old reverby psych rock to this? And this is Ian Gillan's first album with him, right?
I believe so. Yeah.
Okay.
And one other thing to mention before we do that is to put things in perspective timeline wise, because Hendrix is legend. He should be. He should be revered. I mean, there's two periods in rock guitar history. There's before Hendrix and after Hendrix. There's before Van Halen and after Van Halen. And Deep Purple started this thing in '68, really the same year Zeppelin started. And so to put that in context, Jimi Hendrix was still alive when they started this band. When In Rock came out, Jimi Hendrix was still alive. So they were certainly, everyone was influenced by Hendrix. But I think that the evolution was just a natural one to In Rock. I think they just found their sound. And I think Blackmore also switched from a 335 to a Strat and really found his guitar sound. And I think he started being more heavy-handed in the writing.
Gotcha. Carcass, what say you about In Rock?
Oh, I mean, it's a phenomenal record. I mean, with Speed King and Child in Time and Into the Fire, those are all just they were on the Made in Japan album. That's what made me go back to those to find the records. Because I went from Machine Head to Made in Japan, then I thought I need to find the album of the rest of these songs, especially Child in Time. I'd never heard a ballad, so to speak, sound that heavy. And so I don't know. To everyone's point, they did find their sound finally, and it's heavy. You can argue what you want about Black Sabbath being the grandfathers of heavy metal, but I don't know, man. Deep Purple, as far as heavy metal is, they might be right up there with Black Sabbath. And once again, there was always this boat race between, as I was buying records, between Black Sabbath and Purple, and Sabbath got really strange, by the time Sabbath, Bloody Sabbath, and Sabotage and Technical Ecstasy and Never Say Die, it got really weird there for them, and partly to the inebriation factor, and not just on drinking, but I mean on to some serious drugs and alcohol. But I think Deep Purple continued to hone their craft, and by the time they hit Machine Head, they were in full flaming glory and ready and really, I mean, rocking and headbanging type heavy metal rock, or whatever you want to call it. But I love In Rock. I think it's a good launching point for their career. But nobody likes Fireball, which was the next thing to come, and I love that record. I don't know why.
Next?
Fireball's next.
Oh, I must not have that one.
Well, yeah, and then Machine Head.
If I get
then who do we think we are? And but
if
I
get some of this out of order, I apologize.
No, and hey, I make mistakes too, but Fireball was a great record, and who do we think we are? Is that they are? I heard people disparaging those two records, and then everybody is goo goo gaga over Machine Head because it has a wild story behind it. But I don't think they broke stride the whole time. I mean, the production value may be a little bit worse on Fireball, but I don't know. You're the Blackmore guy, Chris. Tell me what you think about that, because I think that the solos, the riffing, I know that there was this constant battle between John Lord and Ritchie to kind of outdo each other, and once again, I think that friendly competition, whether it was friendly or not, I mean, I guess that remains to be seen. But man, I think that fueled the fire anyway, and I mean, who can be better than Roger Glover and Ian Pace as a rhythm section? I mean, even Pace, even to today, is still as solid as ever.
And he's very underrated. John Lord, in my opinion, is the greatest keyboardist in rock history.
Agreed.
Everybody that ever worked with him said he knows literally everything about music.
Well, I will tell you this: uh, I had to find music that bridged the gap because my parents were uber conservative, and anytime I could include keyboards into my discussion with my mother, that helped me
Yeah.
bridge the gap to my parents because she understood it. And when she heard Deep Purple, and I sat her down and we listened to it, she said, "I can tell that that guy is a great musician and a well trained keyboard player." I mean, she knew it. She was one of them, and but I just think it added an interesting wrinkle that bridged the gap from. I mean, I was steeped in jazz fusion too, the Chick Coreas, the Return to Forever, the Electromagnets, all that
Mm.
type of thing, and I think that there's a kind of a strange juxtaposition between Deep Purple and that weird crossover jazz stuff, jazz fusion that was going on. I mean, you look at even bands like Embryo and Brain Ticket and some of those psychedelic wild bands of England even that were doing kind of the similar things, Nectar in Germany and so forth. I just think that the keyboard was probably not your first rock and roll choice, but that fueled something above and beyond just a couple of chords and some distorted vocals. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
Yeah. Well,
And
also,
we
so
haven't even and we haven't even talked about the vocal part of it, which I think was
right, and I'm sure we will along the way. So I missed Fireball again. I've already figured out another one as I stammer there. I figured
okay.
out another one that I'm missing, but let's go ahead
Grab
and
this
get.
one too.
And
Yeah,
that's the last one. That's the last Carcass. That's the last one with Ian Gillan on it before they reunited in '84.
correct. So Machine Head. Now, Chris, I believe that you rate this a solid.
I love that album, and Blackmore is just so prolific and amazing on his solos. It goes from the speed of Highway Star to the bluesiness of Lazy. Uh, it's just brilliant. And the only and that's my, I guess I'm like a lot of people. That's my favorite Mark II lineup album. Um, when we get to Mark III, I cannot say enough great things about this album. This is a freaking 10.
Okay.
Every
Well,
song, and we'll get to the Mark III lineup, but
yeah. Well, let's roll through then.
Well, can I say one thing though about
Yeah,
the
yeah.
about Machine Head?
Yes.
They left off a track and put it on a B side
When a blind man cries.
yes. Why didn't that make the record, Chris?
That's
Do you
a
have
great. I don't have insight to that. That's such a great song.
Well,
if
and
you have and if you haven't heard it, I found it in a box set. And then I kind of dug deeper and found the story. They just thought that it was too mellow. And man, that is
The best
that,
version of that, or a great version of that, is on a live album with Steve Moores from the early 2000s, where
mhm.
they play with an orchestra.
I've got that coming up.
Oh wow.
Okay, and that's a great version of that song.
Um, so I I honestly, to be completely, first of all, the last one has my very favorite Deep Purple song of all time, "Pictures of Home" on it. I love it. So then we go over to this. I've had this on vinyl. I've had it on CD. I listen to it very rarely, but regarded as one of the greatest live albums. What do y'all think?
I agree.
I agree
It's
too,
it's
and
top three.
it's a real live album too. It's not like Kiss Alive, where you know the rest of the story of that.
Yes,
Right.
we do.
Well, and I have the Japanese pressing, and it's on CD, and it's all 3 days. It's it's not just those were snippets taken from each of the 3 day set of shows. And if you have, like I said, I have this Japanese box set on CD that has all 3 days start to finish, and I think they picked the best of the cream of the crop. But man, I used to play that thing. In fact, I had an 8-track that I'd wore it out, and then I bought another 8-track and wore it out because that's what we had in the car. And I still to this day, I think that's a top 3. I can't think of anything better. Maybe Osric. It's even better than Osric Tentacles. Osric Tentacles live under Slunky, which I say is a close number 2. But man, I think Made in Japan is probably the best live album.
I didn't even see it coming that time.
Nope, you didn't.
Damn it.
But it's true.
So rounding out the first round of Ian Gillan albums, I think this album's okay. My favorite song is Mary Long.
I think it's a great song.
I don't have a whole lot of connection with this record. Glad to have it. Don't know if there's anything Deep Purple groundbreaking on here, but we're about to turn the corner. Are we not?
Well, My Woman from Tokyo, you didn't like that?
I mean, it was all right. I heard that on the radio.
Place in Line. I mean, come on,
I heard it on the radio, and I probably wanted to hear Motley Crue, and so I was fighting through Woman from Tokyo to get to it. But anyway,
okay, all right,
yeah, great record. It's not one that I visit. But then, and I don't have a copy of it here. It's up there in the stack of a million CDs. I believe the next thing is Stormbringer. Am I right?
No, it's Burn.
It's Burn. Stormbringer was after.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, this album is just a masterpiece. The song Burn is one of the greatest rock songs ever written, in my opinion. Mistreated is just a clinic of amazing guitar playing. And he did it with Rainbow too, with Dio on that live album, and it's fantastic with Dio. Every song is great. I know there's an instrumental at the end, A200, still a great song. And from what I understand, it's some reference to getting crabs. I don't know if that's some miracle cure medicine, A200, but that's what I heard that song's about. But, you know, this also is a transitional album into David Coverdale and the great Glenn Hughes.
Great.
And both of them are great. That changed the dynamic live. It was somewhat confusing. Glenn would sing, you know, on a lot of songs with Coverdale. So there's some things it was a little bit confusing live to have the two singer thing. And I think Glenn talked too much versus the Mark II lineup with just one vocalist. But Rob is ready to fight me over this. This is the greatest album David Coverdale's ever been a part of. This is his first album. He sent in he got drunk one night, sent in a cassette. Blackmore heard it and they loved him. Brought him in. You know, there's great Whitesnake stuff, but and Trapeze is great too. Yeah, Glenn Hughes. So I have strong emotions about Mark III, and this album is just a freaking 10.
Now, the thing that I'm most excited for you to talk about, Chris, is the next album that I have. And if I'm getting anything out of order, I apologize. And I don't have a complete set of discs. But I really would like you to put some insight into this, as well as us meeting somebody that worked with him. You guys talk about this, because this is one of my favorite Deep Purple albums, just from I'm not a musician, just from a rock fan point of view, I think this thing is great. So set this one apart for us. Give us the history.
Okay. Well, Stormbringer came next.
Yes, sorry.
And then they released Made in Europe. I love this live album as well. I think it's great. I would have cut the lengthy drum solo, but that's okay. So as far as Stormbringer is concerned, the book on that is Blackmore didn't give a shit. He didn't play. He just, let me just go knock this out. He was already checked out and ready to start doing Rainbow. But yeah, this album brings in the American guitarist Tommy Bolin and Carcass. You mentioned rock, rock fusion in the 70s. Bolin was a big part of that. The Billy Cobham Spectrum album, that's what really got their attention to bring him in for an audition. That album also influenced Jeff Beck to do fusion. But this was panned. Oh, it doesn't sound like Deep Purple. And over the years, it's just remained a great album. It's just a great album. It's different, but now we're just talking about the studio stuff. We can start talking about the live stuff, and then there's some interesting things to talk about. But what do you think of this album, Carcass?
No, I think it's super underrated. I think it's a key piece to the puzzle because I think that doing that record helped keep the band together basically. Once Blackmore left, and I don't know, I like it. I go back and revisit it and discover something new on it all the time. I've got the one of the 25th or 30th anniversary releases that has multiple tracks on it.
Yeah, I have that one. Yeah,
I did see them open, or I did see them on that tour, and yes, as the night went along, it kind of got worse and worse. But I was shocked of how initially great it was, and I'm once again, when you're a kid, things don't sound as bad as you think, or they sound really terrible, and then when you go back and hear them as an adult, they take on a whole new life. And right. I've revisited this album several times, and I really like it. And say what you want. I know we say it all the time, about Saint Anger or Load and Reload. Like, are they a good Metallica album? No, but they're still good albums, so to speak. I think that you could probably say something similar to this album. Was it a great Deep Purple album? Maybe not a great Deep Purple album, but it's still a great album.
Yeah, and I agree.
I think it held the band together just long enough for them to catch their breath and figure out what they were going to do moving forward. And I think it's if you don't have it, you need it, because I think you'll understand it now as opposed to back then.
And Bolin was using a tape Echoplex. Page used one too, but Page used one with his theremin. Bolin used an Echoplex unlike any guitar player before or after him. He used it as an instrument. He had it on stage on a stand. He would reach up and adjust it, and you can hear that in his playing on the opening song. Also, the unfortunate thing about the Mark IV lineup is that he became a heroin addict when he got into the band because of the availability, and his, he had more money now. Glenn Hughes was a full-blown addict, and those two guys hit it off. And so the live shows were great or terrible. And I think it embarrassed Ian Pace, David Coverdale, and John Lord to be a part of something that was embarrassing live. Their last show at, I believe it was Liverpool, there's people just screaming at Tommy Bolin during his guitar solo. And he did have to put up with some of that. They also, Tommy Bolin, he had a needle. He fell asleep with a needle in his arm or something and messed up his left fret hand right when they were scheduled to record in Japan. This is a horrific album because he can't play. He couldn't use his left hand. So it's terrible. They re-released it with all the songs, made it sonically better, but it still is what it is. It's a disappointment that they recorded that. Now, this is great, and this is the Mark IV lineup.
The King Biscuit.
Yeah, which came out. They've redone it like this, Long Beach 76. This is a more complete set, and I recently bought this. This is great. But yeah, the Mark IV lineup gets a lot of hate, and rightfully so, because Tommy was a mess when he played live a lot of times. And but when he was great, but he never wanted to play the Blackmore parts. He wasn't even that familiar with Deep Purple when he joined the band. But with Bolin, they did what they did with Steve Morse. They just said, "You be you, and let's just see where that thing goes," which I think was a genius move. I think Perpendicular is awesome. I love this album. And a plug for Tommy Bolin. This album is a masterpiece. This is his first solo
Teaser.
album. Teaser. Glenn
Yep.
Hughes sings on one song. It's got a couple instrumentals. Tommy sings on it. It's just such a great album.
Agreed.
So we got 15 minutes to talk about the
going.
Mark. We got to get to the
reunion.
To the reunion with Perfect Strangers before we get to Steve Moore's.
Yeah,
There
no,
you go.
guys keep going. I'm distracting myself with ordering that live in 1976. Right
No,
now.
when this thing came out, I was so happy because I thought, because that's my favorite. The Mark II is my favorite lineup, and I thought, they actually found something here, and this album is solid. I mean, the song "Perfect Strangers," "Knocking at Your Back Door," "Mean Streak," "Nobody's Home," man, they're great Deep Purple songs. We have back again. We have Deep Purple.
And I was shocked they came back. I thought they'll never get Blackmore to do it, and they did. And that is such a haunting riff on "Perfect Strangers."
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Now, what?
Agree.
Going backwards 1 second. What was the one that we missed? The album that was right before this one that you held up just a second ago.
Come Taste the Band. Oh, well, I went through Come Taste the Band's the Mark IV lineup, and then we went through a bunch of iterations of the live Mark IV lineup.
Yeah, I thought I missed one, though. Okay, go ahead. I'm sorry. I thought we missed one before Perfect.
Carcass also have this. This is a book that came out that details their rehearsals in California. And it's mostly a book of pictures from that session, but it does have a little bit of introductory text.
Is that when they were prepping for Cal Jam, or?
No, this is when
that's the reunion.
This is Mark IV lineup. This is when they were rehearsing with Tommy Bolin, getting ready to go to Germany and record "Come Taste the Band."
Okay.
And by the way, Tommy played bass on a couple tracks. I know he played bass on "Coming Home" because Glenn Hughes was so strung out, they just sent him home. Just go back home, and they recorded that album in Germany.
Scott Evaporated Waters just showed up in the comments.
Cheers from Cali, yeah. So they released "Perfect Strangers," Chris, and then they followed it up with this. House of Blue Light.
I don't think much of that album.
And I don't either.
Wait a minute.
The first song, "A Bad Attitude," I like. Everything else was yawn.
Yeah.
Well, where did this go?
No, that's a Steve Morse record.
No, that's Blackmore. That's
Blackmore
with the other Jolene Turner singing.
Oh, that's right.
Masters and Slaves.
Okay, so where does that come in? Have I got maybe I've got them out of order.
No, that's.
I didn't think much of this at all.
And the Battle Rages On, I think, was the last one before Blackmore quit again, and I didn't think that one was that great either.
So
but you liked Perpendicular.
I did. I really did.
What about Bananas? The worst name for a Deep Purple album ever.
Hang on. I got to catch up here because I got funny things to say.
I don't have strong opinions about Bananas because I haven't listened to it. It finishes second for worst album cover behind Black Sabbath, "Born Again."
So I love the song "Battle Rages On." I didn't get much more into that.
Yeah,
CD.
me too.
Then they've got some live stuff. They've got some of the best live recordings ever. This is one of the ones that they had with the orchestra. And then where are we in the timeline here? Oh, that's cool. Live from Russia. Huh. I didn't realize I had that. And then
we're going to have a fight in the parking lot for that thing.
Well, Chris and
I don't have it either.
He may not remember what I'm about to say. So Chris and I had a chance to go to Oklahoma City on this tour. And
it was San Antonio. Was it
San Antonio? I thought it was Oklahoma City.
It's irrelevant to the story, though.
It really is. So anyway, we were going to go somewhere and interview Ian Pace for a website. It was a Tommy Bolin website.
I was running a Tommy Bolin Mark IV lineup Deep Purple site long time ago. And I wanted to interview Ian Pace. A few things, a few dominoes fell, and they said, "You've got 15 minutes with Ian Pace before the show."
And we didn't make it because
we went to a friend's wedding who wanted us to. Rob was, I think, setting up PA for that. Anyway, we went. We did the right thing. We went.
Yeah. But we did miss, and I gave so recently the buddy that we went to see his wedding, he recently got divorced. And as soon as he called me and told me, and the dust had kind of settled, I gave him shit about, well, I should have gone to the Deep Purple show.
Also, an interesting fact is that Joe Satriani played a tour before Steve Morse joined the band. He's a big Deep Purple and Blackmore fan, and they needed somebody immediately, and so he did a short tour with them until they could decide on a permanent guitar player.
I think I kind of remember that. That's good knowledge.
That would be interesting live shows for sure to hear some of that. Yeah. We're in the Steve Morse lineup.
What album are we at?
Well, we haven't. This is the one that I really like. After Perpendicular, I thought this was really good. Yeah. Produced by Bob Ezrin of Alice Cooper and Knights in Satan's Service fame.
Did we miss Abandon?
Yes, it's right after Perpendicular.
Okay. No idea. Rapture of the Deep.
Oh, that's good. Like
no clue.
It's decent.
I got it in a collection. I have no idea about it. I'm not even sure I've ever played it, but I grabbed it because I didn't have it. It's got a song on it called MTV. Okay. Nothing.
No. I mean, it's okay. It sounds like Deep Purple.
Okay. Well, I'll check it out one of these days. Now, are we here now?
Sure.
I really like that record.
I love this album. I love it. I love it. I was way into Ian Gillan at this time. I was buying his some years before, but I was gravitating toward anything Ian Gillan. I was into Born Again, Black Sabbath. I was trying to find live stuff that he sang on with them. I got a couple of, Gillan's in and Ian Gillan live in Anaheim and whatever. So I was way into this stuff because he just has everybody on these albums. And so I was very connected when this came out, and I think it's just a great album. Simple Song is awesome. Hell to Pay is awesome. Après Vous is fantastic. Vincent Price. And there's a DVD that I've never seen. Oh, including Rapture of the Deep live. Huh. Maybe I should check into that. But this, to me, reconnected me with Deep Purple big time because I did kind of get lost along the way around the Abandon, Perfect Strangers timeline. I dig this one a lot. And then, oh boy, I think this is a show-stopping album. I just love it. Saw him on these couple of tours, and I absolutely love this record. What do you guys think? Are you familiar?
I'm not familiar enough with it. I need to revisit it. I'm a lot more familiar with Whoosh.
Yeah, I like Infinite. I like Infinite, but I do like Whoosh better.
Really?
Yep.
Yeah, this one connected to me. This was you've heard me say this on the show before. This was my lawn mowing album for probably a couple of months. When I'd go out, I'd just strap the headphones on and just put on Infinite because to me, pretty much every song is just great. The only thing I wish they had done is they covered the Doors' Roadhouse Blues for track 10, which is fine. But I'd rather have had another Deep Purple song than them covering the Doors, which they do a great job on. But man, Time for Bedlam is great. Hip Boots is great. All I Got Is You, One Night in Vegas, Johnny's Band. This is a fantastic record, and I encourage you boys to check
If you
these
have
out.
the import version of that, it comes with 5 more songs,
Damn it.
and they're
Now I
Deep
gotta
Purple
go-
songs.
Now I got to go buy that.
Okay, so I know we're long past the Mark One lineup talk, but there is a video you guys have to see that's part of the live album they recorded. They do "Ring That Neck," and it's off of.
Okay.
Oh, they do that live album, and it's 1968, 69. They do a live album, and I think that by the time they did that, it's actually Ian Gillan singing. But the song to look for is called "Ring That Neck," and the reason it's significant is Blackmore was told by the by the maestro that keep your solo short. And the song goes 12 something minutes, and it is some of the most brilliant Blackmore improv. It is just brilliant. And you can see the conductor keeps looking over his shoulder because Blackmore continues to solo over and over. The other must see video is the California Jam, because it's the only concert like that ran on ahead of time, ahead of schedule. Deep Purple's contract said we go on when it gets dark. Well, it ran ahead of schedule, and in the afternoon they said you're on, and Blackmore said the hell I am. He locked himself in a closet and didn't come out until it was dark. And he said, keep these ABC cameras away from me. And then you can see him take the headstock of his Strat and smash it into the lens of the camera guy. Also, he tries to outdo Hendrix, and they blow up his amp, and they used way too much gasoline or whatever they were using, gunpowder, and Blackmore almost gets his pants on fire. I mean, he is pushed or jumps off the stage. It's very, very funny. It's very Spinal Tap.
I have watched that California Jam so many times because it's just such an epic show, and knowing all the controversy around it, and I enjoy it every time I watch it. It's just
and where is network TV these days? I mean, that was on ABC in concert. That was on a regular TV channel, not cable, not pay-per-view, not anyway. We could reminisce about the past, but let's not.
No, let's.
Well, hey, I guess we are. We're talking about Deep Purple.
I'll throw in a random thing about 8-tracks. I'm a guitar player. I love hearing what the guitarist is going to do in the solo. So when I was growing up and put in an 8-track, I'm telling you, there's a conspiracy to make sure that they interrupt the guitar solo halfway through it and go to the next track.
Go to the next track.
It happened on everything. I'm like, oh, this is such it's fading. Now it's going to fade back in. I got to wait 8 to 10 seconds for it to do its thing and switch tracks. But just, I don't know if you recall that, but I always noticed they slice the guitar solo up right in the middle every time.
Foghat, Fool for the City, did the same thing. Oh, well.
I did not. I've never realized that.
So Woo was getting back to where we are because we're at 59 minutes. Whoosh, and then what was
the
after?
Covers album? They did that Covers album.
Yeah.
Crime.
I thought this one was good. I didn't think it was as great as Infinite. In fact, I'm not even sure I liked it as much as Now What. But it's good. I need to give this one some more time. And the Covers album, I feel like a jerk for saying it, but I didn't even bother with it because I'd rather have more new Deep Purple music, but I'm also not 70 trying to write and record an album. So what the hell do I know?
Well, we also missed an important item, the box set.
Oh, I've got that.
This is a really good representation because it's got Mark 1, Mark 2, Mark 3, Mark 4. It's got the reunion stuff, and it has a couple of songs from the first 2 Steve Moore's albums with Deep Purple, and those are fantastic songs they have. Castle Full of Rascals is great.
Yes. I think
And
they'll
there's a great
absolutely.
booklet that comes with it. Like, I still buy CDs, not exclusively, but when it's something I love and I want the booklet that comes with it, or there's a box set, that's where I want to spend my money, because I've bought CDs before, and it's like it has a 4-panel booklet with it. I'm like, why bother? Why did I buy the CD for this?
Well,
Right.
and I have that box, and that's where I heard the when a blind man cries for the first time off that box set,
Yeah.
and that's got a bunch of cool things,
Uh, there's a
rehearsal
there's
tracks,
an
and
outtake from Burn, like an instrumental they didn't end up using.
oh,
Oh,
that's
interesting.
right,
I didn't know that. I don't have that set. I've seen it a
dude. That's
couple
a
times.
Yeah, it's great, Rob. You need to probably pick that up.
I've never bagged it. Um, so we're running short on time, but Chris, I want you to plug what you've got going on musically, from Zeppelin project to solo stuff, because Chris released an album a couple years ago called Destination that if I took him off the screen and we hadn't been friends for 30 years, no kidding, it's one of my favorite uh, heavy rock albums of the past 20 years. I absolutely love it. He found an absolute gold mine of musicians to play on it. So, kind of tell us just a brief minute about that and then what you've got going on
Okay,
next.
sure. Yeah, the Destination album came out almost 2 years ago. I worked with Bruce Kulick, formerly of Kiss, currently with Grand Funk, who was acted like a producer for it, and he also played on one track. I discovered a great vocalist in California named Chris Hodges, and I just, I started writing with him, and it was magic. So we continued to write together. I've got a second album coming out sometime next year. I'm working on finishing the tracks by end of the year, and it will also feature Chris Hodges, and continuing to write with him. That album is called Reach for the Sky. I am in a Zeppelin tribute. I've been doing Jimmy Page in a couple of different tribute bands for about 10 years now. And the Zeppelin project is had a great year this year. We've played in Arkansas, we played in Missouri last year, we played all through Texas. We've played a lot of big stages, festivals, and we have a couple of cool shows coming up in the Dallas-Fort Worth area at Levitt Pavilion on October 14th and at Grandscape on October 28th. So it's been a good year for original music for me, as well as doing the tribute band scene too.
So if you've got Spotify or any, and I'm assuming that Destination is on Spotify and all the streaming
Sure.
stuff, but if people want to interact or grab some, songs or whatever, how can they do that?
Yeah, it's available through all the normal streaming, channels and outlets. I'm easy to find. If you just type in Chris Manning music, you're going to find me.
Yep. Awesome. Well, dude, thanks for coming on the show, man. It's good to hang out and chat. We do this a lot on the phone, but rarely on the show. So thanks for coming on. And I can't push the album enough. It's just got some of the best big rock songs ever on it. So check out Chris Manning's Destination album, and he also knows a shit ton more about Deep Purple than I do.
Yeah, and Carcass, I think we I think we share a lot of the same opinions on the Deep Purple catalog. So it was cool to catch up with you on that.
Yeah, and thank you for not fighting me in the parking lot on the Blackmore thing. I wasn't disparaging him because he's a fantastic player. I mean, I would,
Well, we'd have to get a step stool to fight you, so it would take both of us.
And it's subjective,
and it really is subjective.
Like I hear Kurt Hammett, and I just instinctively start yawning if he's playing a solo.
Well, I'm glad somebody else thinks that, because
I
always thought that was kind of vanilla, as you said, and
not that he's a great rhythm player, but he's their lead player, and it couldn't be more pedestrian.
I think we ought to do an episode on how they go from being completely savage to just completely generic almost. I
Dude,
don't know.
I don't know, man. That last album and Death Magnetic were pretty damn good, I think.
I think Death Magnetic probably has a little more feel for me, but the last one, I bought the 3-disc set. I compiled the best songs from all 3 discs, which included a Deep Purple cover song.
Man, I think
and made one good record.
I think Hardwired is great, but we'll get into that another day. So, all right, check us out on social media. You can follow me on Instagram at IamMetalRob. You can follow the Carcass on Instagram at CarcassJohnArt. I believe that Chris is on Instagram, but again, Google Chris Manning Music. You'll find him. I put the link in the comments for merch way back at the top if you give 2 shits about having a Metal Roundtable t-shirt or anything like that. And Scooter will be back next week, I believe, and we have a guest, do we not?
Desiccation from San Diego.
So we go back into the deep, dark depths of death metal with the Carcass.
Well,
so
just a brief history. I went to this gourd in the heart of Texas. I mean, it was a complete slam metal annihilation. 2 nights at the Haltham Theater here in town, and these 3 brothers, ranging from 15 to 20, but basically were locked down in their house for a year. And they lived in California, in San Diego, and they just perfected their craft. And they were brutal. They picked up a bass player and a drummer, and they had their mom drive them in a minivan all the way here from San Diego to play a 30-minute set. So we'll let them tell the rest of that story. It should be pretty interesting. But that is as metal as it gets. And these young kids absolutely were thrilled to just be on a real stage with a real PA and with real people.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, that'll be encouraging to them. And we're going to have 1 or 2 of the guys, or maybe all the guys on next week. I'm not sure. Hopefully we won't have any technical problems like we do sometimes with bands, but it was good. But Chris, thanks again for being on the show.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Carcass. Yeah. Good to go old school, and we'll get the 3-man booth back up and running next week for Desiccation.
Desiccation, right? San Diego, California.
Hopefully I'll coax a hair metal band in here soon.
Well, Desiccation's a hair metal band because they do this with their hair.
Okay, I don't mean helicopter hair.
Oh, not a helicopter.
Right, well, you know how we do it. Signing off for episode 152. Until next time. Metal will
prevail.